Magical thinking is where someone thinks there's a direct relationship between two unrelated actions. And normally this is a relatively harmless activity, and people realise that there isn't really a genuine relationship between the two events, but just act like there is, or there might be. However, there are occasions in adults, and especially in young children, where this isn't the case and can have some really serious consequences. So, for example, magical thinking might be somebody watching a sports program on TV and thinking last time they stood up, their team scored, so if they stand up again, their team will score again. And of course, the action of standing up hundreds of miles away from the sport event can have no significant effect on the outcome of that sports event, and that's why it's called magical thinking. However, a similar relation some people may put more credibility in could be some kind of magical or faith-based action. So, for example, the action of creating a doll of someone and doing something to that doll, then somehow that affecting the person. Again, the two actions have no way of directly relating to each other. However, there is one circumstance where this can actually have a real-world effect. That is, if someone knows there's a doll of them and that something's been done to the doll, and crucially, they believe that the two are connected, then their mind may tell them that something has happened, and this may, in turn, make them feel like something has happened. And sometimes even scientists can fall into the trap of magical thinking. The key to avoiding the trap is to remember that correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because the statistics appear to show something linking two separate events without a known cause linking the two, just could be a special case of magical thinking. One of the examples of this was a Swedish study into whether living close to power lines could have any impact on your health. At the time, they looked at over 800 different diseases, virtually all of which showed no correlation between whether you lived close to power lines or not. However, there was a correlation between childhood leukemia and living close to power lines. But when you're studying more than 800 different diseases, statistical chances of one disease showing some freak relationship is highly likely. This special case of magical thinking is an example of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Now, later studies into childhood leukemia failed to show any link to power lines, now appears it's just a statistical anomaly. However, the warning signs should have been there. Electricians and power workers spend a large part of their time very close to high voltage wires, yet suffer no ill effects from this other than the standard work-related accidents. There was no mechanism of action as to why being close to a power line would cause a rise in prevalence of this fairly rare disease, yet significantly had no effect on any other related condition. Just one of the number of health scares which turned out to be a special case of magical thinking. However, it isn't just adults who can fall victim to magical thinking. Young children are very vulnerable to it, since their brains and thought processes are still developing rapidly. Now, whilst most adults can be easily reasoned out of their magical thinking, this isn't always the case for children under about 8 years old, since their rational thinking and logic is only just starting to develop. This can have some really serious health impacts on the mental health of small children. For example, a child may have shouted at grandma because grandma, who sat in the chair, wouldn't play with the child. Now, the reason why grandma didn't play with the child might have been grandma was very ill, and the next day grandma dies of a heart attack. However, to the child, these events may have a different sequence. In their mind, grandma died because the child shouted at them. This form of magical thinking is very common in young children, especially because they view almost everything from their own perspective. I think they can easily believe that everything that happens around them is due to something they've done or something they've said. It also means that they think if they apologise really seriously to grandma, she'll come back to life. As you can imagine, it can have a serious impact on the mental health and well-being of a growing child. And whilst the previous example was a rather extreme one, children also may have difficulty separating dreaming about something happening and it happening in reality. Additionally, if children want something to happen, they're more likely to engage in magical thinking in an attempt to make it happen. Now, sometimes magical thinking has its roots in reality. It just gets taken way too far. A child may be told to wash their hands to stop diseases spreading. The child then, on one occasion, skips washing their hands. The next day, they catch chickenpox or some other standard childhood disease. However, again, to the child, these two events are directly linked to each other, which, whilst possible, is fairly unlikely. This may then have effects in later life, resulting in obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, as now the grown adult is now constantly washing their hands to ensure they don't catch a disease. They may rub the skin red raw, in turn making catching a disease far more likely, not less likely. So whilst magical thinking is fairly common in humans, even in some animals, it can lead us into difficulties if we're not aware of it. So we'll try to be aware when magical thinking may actually be happening.